I'm still faster than you.
It may be.
Hello and welcome back to Unlimited Limited, the show where we work together to get better at limited formats in Star Wars Unlimited. Today is the first episode after that whole big Lawless time video that maybe some of you saw. And it's the first episode in which I get to talk about my actual thoughts now having played the limited environment in this format in the form of pre-release. So I attended two pre-release events at my local game store, and they were both very fun. So super early thoughts, I guess. The format seems really cool. The splash bases are definitely interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing some more limited in this set. Unfortunately, there's not actually a limited PQ near where I live this set. There's one, I think, but I think it's on the same day as another PQ that's even closer, so I'm going to be going to that one. But yeah, so unfortunately, no competitive limited for me this set, but nevertheless, I'm sure I'll be doing lots of events. All right, so on Friday night, I played a Boba Blue deck. So Boba is sort of, as we of course talked about in the pre-release, my top pick for villainy leader in this set. And I think that after the pre-release, I am more confident that that is the case. He seems very strong. The bounty hunter payoffs in this set are quite good. There's a lot of bounty hunters that you would just put in a deck anyway, and whenever they're in a deck with Boba Fett, they get, of course, even better. Boba Blue, I don't think, is the best version of the deck. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Boba, of course, wants you to... Like I said a second ago, there's already cards that you would just put in a deck that Boba Fett just makes even better, and then Boba Fett's ability wants you to attack into your opponent's units in ways that are favorable trades for you, which is what you want to do anyway most of the time in Limited, right? You usually want to be making favorable trades in your opponent's units. So Boba makes the units that are already good better, and the option that you usually prefer to take, he makes that better too. So Boba Fett just all around very, very strong leader. Flips... on 5 into a 3/6 raid 1, very reasonable stats. So on his flip side, he gets you credits, and then if you have a couple of other bounty hunters down, you're just going to get an insane amount of credits on Boba's flip turn, and maybe you can slam like an 8-drop the next turn. Or you don't even need to like use all of your credits in one big play. Like the turn Boba comes down, you play like some 4-cost bounty hunter, you attack him with Boba Fett, you attack him with some other bounty hunter, and then you can maybe play a 3-cost bounty hunter, or if you had an extra credit token from earlier from his ability, you play another 4-cost bounty hunter. You can just kind of overwhelm the board with mid-range units with Boba Fett, or yeah, you can save up and just play something big. So Boba Fett's ability, very, very strong. Don't sleep on that at all, as we all know. So let's get into the actual deck. So I think you do want to build Boba as like a mid-rangey leader with maybe a couple of nice pieces of top end. That's how I did here, as we'll see in a second. My top end is a little bit lacking, but that's okay. So let's go through the deck really quick. I'll talk about each card and what I thought about it. Each card in this deck, of course, isn't like necessarily exactly what you want to be doing in a Boba deck. So we had Putting a Team Together as my only 1-cost card. This is just like fine filler, I think. I think I maybe used it once and it was okay. The fact it doesn't hit green is a little bit unfortunate, of course, because if you're playing it, you're almost certainly in a green deck, unless this is your one out of aspect that you do with your base, but that's probably not what you want to be doing. So that being said, like, you're still going to hit options. I mean, 8 cards is like in limited. That's a large portion of your deck. That's going to be at least a third of your deck, assuming you're sticking to the 30 card minimum and playing this on turn 1, which you don't want to be doing. And every other situation is going to be more. But the no green is a real downside. Like, again, it can't hit like what maybe you look at the top 8 and there's like a perfect card for what you're hoping to do at that time, but it's green, you can't do it. So still fine, like it's a filler. I don't think you want to include this. Like if I had another good 2-drop, I would have played it instead of this, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and it's fine. C-3PO was next. I don't think I played him at all. I might have once. This is one that I was like, oh, experience counter for a unit that has a trait that's the same as my leader. Boba Fett is an Underworld Bounty Hunter, which are 2 of the most supported traits in this format. And sure enough, a lot of my deck is Underworld Bounty Hunters, but even still, I didn't find C-3PO that impressive. Again, what you want to be doing in Boba is playing units that can trade into your opponent's units, and C-3PO does that really, really poorly. Yeah, sure, he like sets up another unit to do that better, but I don't think so. I didn't love him a ton, but of course, he's a 2 if you need a 2, and he's not the worst thing in the world. Follower of the Code I thought was pretty good. I was pretty impressed with 2-cost 2/3s, which is a weird thing to say because there are a lot of 2/4s, but those kind of trade evenly. There's 3/2s. There's Leppy Lookout, who's a shielded 3/1. There's even a 3/3 in the form of Jin. There's also the 2/3 raid one, which I like a lot. We'll talk about him in a second. I like him a lot more. But yeah, this was like fine. It was a bounty hunter, which was very handy in some circumstances. But 2 isn't usually enough to finish it off on its own. But with some extra help, Follower of the Code can be great. For example, if you do Follower of the Code into the 3-drop, that it's like Fleet Lieutenant. I don't remember what it's called. It's a 3/3 that you attack with a bounty hunter and it has +2/+0. Doing Follower of the Code into that on turn 2 will basically always kill your opponent's turn 1 play, and Follower of the Code will usually live, and you'll get a credit token, and now you have 2 units to their 1, and you have a credit token. Like, that's pretty nice. Yeah, big fan of this, honestly. Relevant tag, good stats. I liked playing this card. I will be picking this up pretty highly as we go forward. Leppy Lookout, I think actually on my last slide, yeah, I had a picture of Leppy Lookout here, and the reason is I forgot to mention that actually. In my last set I did this as well, where I just put a picture of a card that was like, this deck wouldn't have been the same without this card, and this deck it was Leppy Lookout. So, not a bounty hunter. If Leppy Lookout was a bounty hunter, it would be actually bonkers in Boba, and it might even push Boba Blue up to my favorite archetype of Boba. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but definitely would make it insane. That being said, I mean, a 3/1 shielded overwhelm for 2 is very, very strong. I think this card is crazy. It trades into so much stuff. Definitely sucks if your opponent is playing Aura, but nobody really played Aura, kind of. Generally, though, Leppy Lookout, great card. It always felt good to play it on turn 1. Every now and then, actually, if I was feeling particularly frisky in that game, I would just mulligan for Leppy Lookout, even if I had like a weak curve, like maybe I had Pirate Snubfighter as like the 1/2 drop in my hand, I'm like, I could definitely do worse. I could draw a hand with no 2s, but like I have 2 Leppy Lookouts in a 30-card deck. I'm gonna go for that, and yeah, so definitely an insane card. Now, Partisan Infantry I think is actually very, very strong. I knew sort of intellectually, like from looking at the whole like list of cards, that it was going to be strong, but actually playing with it, it did feel very, very strong. If you had initiative and you led on this, that just like bricks so many of your opponent's turn 1 plays. And if you don't have initiative and you lead on this, it doesn't necessarily brick them quite as hard, but it still makes it like very awkward for them a lot of the time. This trades up nicely. It's not a bounty hunter, sadly, but it's just very, very strong. It's basically this set's impression of a 3/3. Of course, it's not as good as a 3/3, but it's it does a good enough impression that I think this is one of my favorite common 2-drops in the set for sure. Pirate Snubfighter felt about what I expected. The ambush didn't really come up all that often. This whole set seems like it's fought on the ground pretty substantially. Again, a couple of exceptions that I'll talk about whenever I'm done talking about this deck list. But it's definitely, like, it's still just like a fine 2. You'll play it if you need to, and the ambush keyword is definitely relevant. I can't say it's not, but yeah, this is just like a ground set, and if you're playing space units, I think they need to be pretty high impact by either pushing damage is the biggest one, or getting you value in some other way, maybe through restore, or depending on the kind of deck you're doing, credit tokens. And I just don't think Pirate Snubfighter does all those things super well, but I think it's still fine. Then we had Rhodian Bondsman, not Bodian Ronsman. Rhodian Bondsman, which again, this is sort of one of those like reluctant includes. Is like, all right, yeah, like it's fine statted for 2. Every now and then, I think this happened only once actually to me, but I could see it happening more often. It just gets you 2 credit tokens. You attack into their 3/2 on turn 1. They get 1 credit token. You get 2 because it's a bounty hunter. You exhaust Boba Fett. That's really cool. But yeah, I don't think this card is particularly amazing. It's not like a 2-drop that you'll prioritize like super highly, like Partisan Infantry. I don't think I was ever in a situation where I played this and it was better for my opponent, which is nice, but that isn't to say that those situations won't happen. I think they probably will, maybe even around 50% of the time. But I think that, yeah, card is fine, relevant tag, decent stats. That's how I felt. Now, Betrayed Trust is a card that I stuck my neck out a little bit on my big long set review, saying that I think it's a little bit better than people are saying. And I will say it's early signs. It's not looking good for my wild prediction. It's not necessarily bad. I will say I don't think I played it once. That doesn't necessarily mean that I would never play it, but I think I always ended up resourcing it, which is usually not a good sign. Again, small sample size, but early signs, I'm being honest with you guys, it's not looking good for Betrayed Trust, from my experience at least. I still can imagine this scenario, and I'm sure it will happen sometimes where it is really good. You know, they deploy their leader, they put like mastery on it or something like that, and then you betrayed trust and you just run all of your units into their leader and kill it for like free, I guess, kind of. You keep all your units, you just kind of had to waste your turn. But that's like a fine use of your turn, because in principle that means they wasted their turn too. They flipped their leader, put mastery on it, and you both ended with the same sort of outcome. So yeah, I mean, I can still imagine a scenario where it's good, but it just wasn't for me this weekend. I don't know if that's a fluke or if that's going to be the standard. So, unfortunately, I think that I'm a little lower on this card now than I was last week. Now, Kill Switch, I think maybe went a little bit up in my estimation. This card really helps you ignore space in a way that I was kind of forgetting would be relevant. A lot of times, the game would come down to me just kind of ignoring space. Neither of my pre-release pools had a ton of space in them, and sometimes that was really bad for me because my opponents were hammering me in space for a lot of damage. And if I could just kill switch one of their big scary space units, then that usually swung the tempo enough in my favor that I was happy to spend 2 resources in a card on doing it. It very rarely, like I don't think I ever killed a unit with kill switch. But just like the tempo slowdown of exhausting it and then it being a little bit smaller after that is nice. And then I guess in a pinch you can run a smaller unit into it. I think I also used this on the ground once or twice, but it was usually kind of space insurance for me. I think I used it on the leader once of my opponent, which was nice. But yeah, I am very high on this card though. I think 2 is probably my limit. I don't know if I would run more than that, but I do like the 2. Callous Bounty Hunter was great. I also feel like I need to mention this about Saboteur in this set. Saboteur is really, really good. Like weirdly good, I found. There's a lot of shielded units in this set, and there are a lot of sentinels in this set that you want to be able to get around. And the Bounty Hunters especially, I say Bounty Hunters especially, but that's because that's been my experience this weekend. But maybe other units too, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I will say it seems like Bounty Hunters especially have access to a lot of Saboteur, which does actually benefit Boba's ability a decent amount, because you have Callous Bounty Hunter down, your opponent plays some big Sentinel that he can't get, that normally wouldn't be able to get through to kill a small unit and make a credit token, but Callous Bounty Hunter still can. Or if your opponent's unit has a shield, which would make it kind of awkward for you to get that credit token, Callous Bounty Hunter can still do it. So I think that a Saboteur is a very, very good keyword in this set, and it does seem to be around a lot, I will say, especially, again, in the Bounty Hunters theme, but very high on that keyword. I think this card is quite strong. I'm happy to play. Honestly, I would play more than 1 copy pretty happily. Hunter for Hire was a weird one. I think I was like reasonably lowish on this card in my set review. Now, it's still a 3-cost 4/4, so I don't remember exactly what I gave it. It might have been like a C+. I'm not 100% sure. But this ability is certainly downside. But if you're in a Boba deck, which you often will be if you pick up this nice efficient green 3-drop that is a Bounty Hunter, then you are almost certainly going to have more credits than your opponent. Or an easier time making credits than your opponent. So if you play Hunter for Hire, and your opponent doesn't have a credit to immediately take it, Hunter for Hire himself is probably going to make credits faster than your opponent can. So I might have slightly underrated this card, but maybe specifically in Boba Fett. I still am not 100% sure I would really be happy to play this outside of Boba Fett. I probably still would, just 3-cost 4/4 is a little bit hard to knock. But if I played this in a deck that doesn't make credits and I queue into like a Lando, I might just be straight up cutting this in game 2. I think that, you need to be able to do the credit thing, but luckily Boba can, so I think I never had an issue with this card over the pre-release. I think every time I played it, it just felt like a 3-cost 4/4. My opponent either didn't have the credits or they had fewer credits than I did, so if they did take it, I could just take it back and then we're back where we started, but we both have -1 credits, right? So, yeah, I think this card is a little bit better than I gave it credit for. No pun intended. Next is Katana, which, again, Underworld is a very supported keyword, and when you combine this with credit tokens, you can get some big stuff out quick, but I still didn't love this. Like it always felt fine. I think I gave it like a little bit of a low grade. I don't remember exactly what I gave it, but I think it really did feel like a C to me. Like it was like, yeah, okay, I guess this is something I can do on turn 2 and then like really hope that I have a nice turn 3 play. And that wasn't always the case. Sometimes it was. It felt like it was just very, mixed on that. So definitely not something that I'm super excited to play in the future, but it will probably find its way into some of my decks again, especially with Underworld units, which you'll just have lots of. So don't worry about meeting that requirement. Then we have Prototype Tie Advance, which was one of my off aspect cards. I was, of course, playing Boba Blue this day. This was obviously this is not like the most splashy, fancy off aspect thing you can do, but like it's a great curve filler. It's like very good stats. Sometimes you can just run away in space with a card like this. It's never what I wanted to do, but I think it is what I did twice. Where like turn 2, I just looked down at my hand, I had another 2-drop, I had Tie Advance, and then I had like a 4-drop, and I'm like, well, I think I'm just going to use my base action. The only other off aspect card I think I had in this deck, I had the Stranger and Vermilion, which are of course probably more exciting off aspect plays than Tie Advance, but it's hard to beat having a good curve. I'd rather have a good curve than skip my turn 2 play and have the Stranger on curve. Big fan. So this card's great. Your opponent, like I said, sometimes will just straight up ignore space. I kind of did in my Saturday deck. And that can be like 4 damage a turn is not irrelevant and will just close out the game if your opponent ignores space. And that's a pretty scary threat to have on a turn 2 play. I'm very high on Prototype Tie Advance. I'll be putting it in most of my decks that can run it. Rogue One felt like weirdly good, like better than I think I expected it to be. Units are dying all over the place, right? Especially in Boba, like my units are generating me credits. So whether they die or not, if they finish an attack and kill an enemy unit. So sometimes they die doing that, in which case I get to scry 2 off of Rogue One. And sometimes my opponents just decide they want to kill my units because they're tired of me getting credits off of them, in which case I scry 2 off of Rogue One. It just felt like I was rigging my draws so well every time. And I think that, this card is very strong. And, like, you pay in stats for it, kind of, right? Like, a 3/3 is technically understated for a 3-drop. Like, we saw a 3-cost 4/3 here. But, like, paying 1 stat for this effect, I think is more than fair. I'm very happy to be running Rogue One here. So, definitely... we'll be looking for that in the future. It is a rare, unlike Prototype Tie Advance, which is a common, by the way, so you can just have a swarm of these. But yeah, big fan. Ruthless Duo was, I think, in principle a good card, but in this deck in particular, it was bad. You need to have another villain unit, and what do you notice about my curve up until this point? I have Prototype Tie Advance, Pirate Snub Fighter, and Callous Bounty Hunter as my only villain units. And sure, these are all like, with the exception of maybe Pirate Snub Fighter, which maybe isn't exactly what you want to be doing on turn 1. Like, both of these are good turn 2 plays, but like maybe you don't always have it, or your opponent's able to deal with it right away. Like, Ruthless Duo just basically never did the 2 damage. Sometimes I was just like waiting till I flip my leader, and then I have a villainy unit, so now I can do the 2 damage with Ruthless Duo, and that always felt like I was making a pretty big tempo sacrifice. Just to be clear, I never like deliberately waited a turn to do that, but sometimes it was like when I was debating between this and another play, I erred on the side of, okay, well, at least next turn I get to flip my leader, do this. It's a little bit underdropped, but maybe that's fine. Yeah, only ground units, of course, was definitely a downside if you're trying to ignore space, which I wasn't quite as much tonight, but I was still a little bit. Yeah, I think this card is good, but you should try to get there on your early curve of villainy units, which I very much did not in this deck. I think this is a very bad deck for Ruthless Duo. Next is Hidden Hunters here, which was just exactly what you want. It's a perfectly fine statted 4-drop with the Bounty Hunter tag and Hidden. Great, loved this. It played very well into my Boba flip turn where I was going to make 1,000,000 credits because I could play this on 4, have it guaranteed survive because of Hidden. Then next turn Boba, get in with Hidden Hunters, or more likely I would get in with Hidden Hunters, exhaust Boba to make the credit, then flip Boba, attack with Boba, probably get another credit. Yeah, it just felt like Hidden Hunters was just such a great way to ramp with Boba, and then just like a well-statted unit as well. Big fan of this. Happy to run this in all future Boba decks, and probably most green decks too. I mean, it's just like a good statted card. Vigilant Scouts here was another one that I didn't play actually that much. It's the same cost as Hidden Hunters, and for one less, you get Restore 2 instead of Hidden, which is like maybe better, I guess, but the 4 to 3 actually seemed to matter a lot. Again, small sample size, so I'll keep you posted on that, but as of now, that does feel like an actual, like, real difference. All right, Haymaker is another one that I have to talk about. Haymaker was very, very strong. It always felt good. It was incredible to put on your leader. It was incredible to put on a space unit so the space unit case is particularly interesting because there's so few space units in this set. If your opponent matches you in space and you're able to untap and do Haymaker with the initiative, then you're probably just going to win. They probably don't have that many space units, and now you have one that just killed one of the space units they do have and is now big enough to maybe kill any future space units they play. Haymaker on a space unit is like a very real thing that you need to be thinking about. Haymaker on a leader is also very real. Like that one stats on a leader, we all know that any buff you give to a leader is very strong, and the fact that it also doubles as removal is very, very nice. I'm very high on Haymaker. I think this card is great. You even sometimes put it on just like non-leader grand units. That's fine too, but usually it's one of those two situations I mentioned from my small sample size this weekend. Huge fan of Haymaker. Removal is a lot better in this set than it has been in the previous sets. It's not incredible. It's not like, ridiculously good or anything, but it's, when we compare it with the removal and Secrets of Power, it's substantially better than that. So keep that in mind whenever you're making your evaluations. Mastery was about as good as everyone thought it was. It seemed just insane. There were games where I just put it on my leader when Boba flipped, and then it just kind of felt like it was game over, especially if I had initiative, because then it's like, okay, I flip Boba, then they do something, maybe they flip their leader, maybe they don't. I put Mastery on my Boba, now you just can't flip your leader because I can just kill it for free, basically, and get a credit token, and still play a 2-drop even if I don't get a credit token somehow. Like, yeah, Mastery is just is so insane. I had circumstances where my opponents would put it on their space units, and those became very difficult to deal with. Of course, there is a decent amount of like bounce effects and some, like I said, harder removal in this set, so that keeps Mastery at bay a little bit, but it's still just a very strong effect. So careful for Mastery. Obviously, you want to put this on your leader, but you can put it anywhere, and if it's just a big removal check. If your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it, then tough luck. Nightwind Assailants is a card that I always wish had the Bounty Hunter tag, but it doesn't. So 5 cost 5/5 Sentinel, big fan of that. If I didn't have like Mastery for my leader on the turn I flipped Boba, I could just play Nightwind Assailants, and then I could go ham with whatever Bounty Hunters I still have, make a bunch of credit tokens without my opponents dealing with my weakened Bounty Hunters from previous turns. Huge fan of this card. It's just like, we've seen 5 cost 5/5 Sentinels before. Granted, they've had like upside, I think, but this is still good enough. The Stranger is a card that I think is a very, very strong limited and constructed card. However, I actually don't think I played it even once in any of my actual like main games. I played a game after the pre-release ended where I played him, but in any of my main games, I don't think I played him at all. And I think it's actually because I maybe only drew him once, and it was not at a point in the game where I really could get away with doing it. I still think he's good, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately I don't have much to say about him from like personal experience. I do want this card for constructed though, so I'm happy I opened him. Next is Undercity Hunting Team. This card also just felt like very strong. Like it's a 5 cost 5/5, which is, that's fine. It's a little bit like the premium 5-drop stat is a 6/6, but we can't expect them all to be that. And this, you get -1/-1 on stats for like a very powerful card selection draw effect. Again, you're going to expect a lot of cards in your deck to be a Bounty Hunter, especially if you're doing the Boba thing, which I was trying to. It was just very, very strong. Always just drew me to something else. Could generate me a credit if I attack with them. Big fan of this. Great value. And then lastly, there's one more. I had Vermilion, which was another one of my off-aspect cards. I did actually play this one a couple times, and it always felt really like it could have been good. I think most of the time, I think one time it was very good, where I hit something great off the top of my deck, and that was it. I won the game off of it. But I think every other time I just kind of hit a 2-drop or like a 1-drop, and I chose not to play it. Or I guess not 1-drop, but like a 2-drop. And I chose not to play it because I'm like, it's not going to affect the board that much at this point in the game, and I don't want to give my opponent 2 credit tokens that they might actually be able to throw some huge threat down for. But in principle, I do think this card is quite strong. The mini game of whether you choose your deck or your opponent's deck, I think, is actually kind of like nuanced and interesting. I always chose my own deck, but I'm open to the fact that that actually just might be wrong. Maybe I'm supposed to choose my opponent's deck, especially when my deck looks kind of like this, where there's not like an insane amount of top end. It's very much like an aggro mid-range pile. And then lastly, I had Industrious Team, which I never paid 8 for. Well, I did, but with credits. Like, I never played him on the 8 resource turn. The games were over by then for the most part. And yeah, he felt nice. Like the stats are a little bit awkward for an 8 drop, but again, he never really felt like an 8 drop. He always felt like kind of like a 6 drop or something, in which case the stats are a bit better. Came down, killed something, and that was the roll. Also, it's a bounty hunter, so it can help you build your credits back up. But at this point in the game, getting credits probably doesn't matter a ton. So that was this deck. How did it do? So my games with this deck were, I played Boba Red in game 1, which that it actually was like it was kind of close. That's more points in favor of Boba being quite good. My second game was a Lando deck. I think it was Lando Blue. I should have written it down at the time. My opponent had like a crazy start. They played unmarked credits to make a credit token. Then they exhausted Lando, chose my deck, and named, I think, Blue, and they hit. So they went into turn 2 with 5 resources effectively. I did end up managing to win that game because, while I think this could have easily gone the other way, my opponent didn't really have a follow-up for that. I think maybe they were hoping to draw like a nice 5 drop or something they could play on turn 2, but they did not. It just seems like they didn't draw any of their top end, like it was all on the bottom of their deck. So even though they did actually continue to successfully ramp with the Lando, them skipping their turn 1 effectively in terms of like board presence ended up allowing me to close out the game before they were able to draw all their big threats, which was nice. Game 3 was against Chewy Yellow, and Chewy's another leader that I'm like reasonably high on, and I still am. I think Chewy is very, very strong. I will say the 2 copies of Kill Switch was actually pretty nice into Chewy, because they would, use their whole 4 resource turn, flip out their leader. I would just exhaust it and make it permanently smaller. That was very, very nice. It felt like a huge tempo win because then I could still play another 2 drop. And those games felt like once I dealt with Chewy, I just kind of was fine. Like I was never really worried about that after that because I could just flip my leader and now I have a bunch of board presence and they've just lost a lot of tempo. My opponent did use the Chewy ability like pretty often, which was kind of interesting, and actually it seemed not that bad to do. I was a little bit worried about that ability because of course blowing up your own resources is like always pretty bad, but it meant they were able to get like some pretty nice trades into me, and they still got that credit token back, which they could like use later, or they could just underdrop and not use it. Like I was usually I was pretty surprised with how well Chewy's ability played. I was a little bit nervous about that, and it ended up being okay. Then my last game of the night was against Hera Red. I do think Hera is good, but I was able to run away with that one too, just with all of the extra credit stuff I have, and all of the removal between Haymaker. And once I put Mastery on my leader, it's just it's tough to come back from that. I will say my last opponent just after the tournament though did like switch to an Aura deck, and we played a game out and they won with that deck, which was cool. It turns out Aura's pretty good into like double Leppy Lookout. Then they were always able to kill my leader pretty quickly, which into these like decks where the leader flips super late, it's pretty important that you can kill your opponent's leader on curve to maintain some idea of board control and not get overwhelmed, and they were able to do that each time. So they actually beat me when they played Aura, but that was not part of the tournament, lucky me. So I did actually officially end up going 4-0 with this deck, which was nice. I think I was kind of a little bit carried by the double Haymaker, double Mastery, but I still think this deck was like pretty nice. And the credit tokens I was getting did feel like it could ram me into some stuff pretty nicely. All right, let's talk about Saturday, which you guessed it, I'm back on Boba, but this time I'm on Boba Yellow. And I will say, I think if you're doing the Bounty Hunter thing, Boba Yellow is probably a better version of the deck. The standout card for me here was Forlom. It was just very good, but this card here is sort of like a stand-in for just good ambush cards and good Bounty Hunters, of which my deck had a lot. So we'll get into it. We'll be a little bit quicker this time because I think we've already talked about some of these units. So Black Sun Patroller, it sort of has the same issue as I didn't run it Mystic, but the 2/3 ambush ship, where like you want your space units to be like kind of high impact to the set, it seems, unless your opponent is doing like space stuff of their own and you actually need to fight up there. You usually would probably prefer not to play this on turn one, and that is what I've found. C-3PO we've already talked about. Canyon Frontrunner is another card that I am going to talk about a little bit extra in the next slide. It is actually possibly one of the best turn one plays you can make if you have the initiative. There are so many games where you just play this on one and it just feels like your opponent, whatever they were going to do, like almost anything, is just, they just get completely blown out. Like if you have the initiative and they were going to play a 2/3, doesn't matter anymore. If they were going to play somehow even a 3/3, with like Jin, doesn't matter anymore. If they were going to play a 3/2, doesn't matter anymore. If they were going to play a 2/2, doesn't matter anymore. Right? There's so many cards that this just completely hoses. Even like 2/4s, this doesn't hose quite as cleanly, but it's still like pretty good. You just go into base, you give the defender, you give their unit -2, -0, and then yeah, they can, I guess, probably kill it next turn because they're probably not going to attack with that unit, which means they're probably going to get initiative. But like, that's okay. Your 2-drop got 3 into base and traded evenly still. Like, that's fine. And that's like kind of worst case scenario for this card in a lot of cases. I will say I'm a little bit critical of the design of this card because I do think it is such a coin flip. If you open on this card with the initiative, it is so much better than opening on this card without the initiative. I'm not really sure what the design ought to be for a card like this, but that is something that I'm not a huge fan of in terms of the flippiness of things, but definitely for the purpose of trying to win games, it is a very, very good card. Follower of the Code we've talked about. Partisan Infantry we've talked about. Weequay Pirate was a card that I wasn't super happy about because during my set review, because everything after Saboteur is just flavor text, right? You're basically never going to be playing this for 2 credits, and if you are, it's not like massively exciting. Oh yay, it's a 3/4 instead of a 2/3. But like I said on the last deck, this has Saboteur, and I think that's like a very strong keyword this set. A lot of shield, a lot of sentinels, and Weequay Pirate is just a nice clean way of dealing with those. Trades evenly with Leppy Lookout if you have the initiative. 000 was sort of my in the last deck I had a 3-cost villainy aggression card as my splash, and this time I do as well. This time it's 000, which I think is very good. It's a curve filler. You do run the risk, and this did happen to me once, of whenever you're playing your out of aspect card, if it isn't big and splashy and impactful, you do run the risk of it just like getting bounced or something like that, in which case now it costs 5, right? You can only use this action once for it. So that did happen to me once where I played it on 2 because it was the only card I had, and then my opponent just bounces it, and now it's like, okay, well that may as well have been removal because now I'm just going to resource this card. Still though, I mean, if you need a curve filler, it's a curve filler. It's not the most exciting splash in the world, but sometimes I needed to do it. Cartel Heavy Fighter is the same thing. It's a space unit that's like, sometimes you just got it. It's a curve filler, right? This is one of those cards that's like, all right, it's like the 29th or 30th card in your deck. It's fine. Same with Champions KT9 Pod Racer. I was never like super stoked about playing this card. It was always like, if I have to. And Getaway Freighter was a little bit better than that. I do think this is one of the better versions of the like create a credit token cards, because you are basically always going to have a ground unit, so the fact that this can like sort of occasionally get chip damage into base while still generating you credits, I'm kind of game for that. So I'm not going to say you like definitely should run this card. I'm not going to give this card the stamp of being like good, but I'll give this card the stamp of being like fine. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Cage Elite was decent. It is a really bad defender, and that held it back a little bit. But I mean, when it did get to attack, like when I had the initiative and I could go turn 2 Cage Elite, I did feel pretty good about it. It usually was able to kill whatever my opponent's turn 2 play was pretty freely. But like it would kind of just trade even with it. I wasn't super impressed with this card. I think maybe if it had like the Bounty Hunter trait, that would be enough to push it over for me. But as of now, I think I'm also just giving this the okay stamp. Now, Target Tagger is awesome. Target Tagger is like it's the dream turn 2 play in your bounty hunter deck, because you do like a turn 1 follower of the code, or something like that, and then I think that was my only turn 1 bounty hunter in this set, or in this deck. But you do like your turn 1 bounty hunter, you do turn 2 target tagger, boom, you kill their turn 1 play, both of your things live, you make a credit. Incredible. Huge fan of this card. Genuinely, I think it's one of the best cards you can have in like a Boba bounty hunters deck. And it's a bounty hunter itself. Backed by the Huts is like fine. I think it ended up doing a little bit better than I expected, just because I wasn't expecting it to be as easy as it was to make credit tokens with Boba Fett. But every now and then you would just play it as 3 cost, make a credit, defeat a shield. I think I did that like twice. And it was like, I'd really rather be playing a 3-drop here, but in a pinch, it's fine. My 3 slot, as you can see here, is not particularly cracked, with the exception of target tagger and I guess 000. But out of aspect. So sometimes I just had to do this. Ruthless Duo is next, and once again, not very high on the villainy cards that come out earlier than it. Weirdly, I think I had Black Sun Patroller down a couple of times, which helped me do it, but yeah, I want to like this card, and I'll have to actually look at what the early curve villainy units look like, but like 2 out of 2 of my time so far, it's not been very good because of the difficulty of activating its one plate ability. I think that is probably a fluke, though, and if you can get that early villainy curve, it's probably very good. Hidden Hunters, we've talked about. Qui-Gon felt really nice. I will say the card selection wasn't, like, insane. Like, looking at 3 and discarding 1 is definitely good, don't get me wrong. But you know exactly what 2 cards you're going to be drawing next. And sometimes that's really good, but sometimes you really wish you could have put those cards on the bottom of your library or in your discard pile or something like that, right? That being said, hard for me to complain about a 4-cost 3/5 Sentinel. It's good. I like this card. I found I usually did get 2 instances of his ability off, one from the 1 plate and 1 on attacking, so yeah, I think this card is good, and I will continue to put it in my yellow decks. Season Tracker as a 4/4 Hidden Bounty Hunter is just kind of a slightly worse version of Hidden Hunters, so nothing much to say here. I still think it was good. Now, Zuckuss, which you'll notice is a rare, and you'll also notice I had 2 of them. Big fan of Zuckuss. This card felt insane. I mean, a 4-cost 3/5 is slightly under stats, but what you get for that is completely worth the lost stat. Saboteur, of course, and then this like on attack if you control another bounty hunter unit, which I pretty much always did in this deck. You can kind of see so far, right? Bounty hunter, bounty hunter, bounty hunter, bounty hunter, bounty hunter, and then of course if I played him a little bit later, I have lots of bounty hunters in the top end, and my leader's a bounty hunter. So I usually had this. I think there was one time where I didn't, in which case I just like didn't first action attack with Zuckuss. I simply went into the next turn, I flipped Boba Fett, and then I attacked with Zuckuss, which, you know, was a slightly unoptimal. Like, I would have rather attacked first with Zuckuss, but that's like the fail case, is that you curve this into your leader, who is a bounty hunter. So Zuckuss and Forlom and some other yellow cards we'll talk about later is why I think that Boba Yellow is probably going to be the best version of the deck. There's just so many very, very strong bounty hunters, some really nice synergies. And I think that it's probably going to be the most pure bounty hunter version of the deck, which is a very clean way to pick up wins, which is a very nice way to do things. So I did have 2 of this. Once again, I feel like I need to apologize for that. It's a rare, and I had 2, and it was very good in my deck. So apologies to everyone. You just simply open packs better. I don't really know what to say. Next was Haymaker. We've already talked about that. It was, of course, insane in here. It was great on Zuckuss as well, because, you know, if you think your opponent doesn't have removal, because now his power is higher, so he deals 4 every time he attacks instead of 3, which is, as we talked about when I was talking about my Friday night deck, 4 and 3 are actually, it does seem like they're pretty big breakpoints in the set. Then we had a Forlom. That's right, I had both Forlom and Zuckuss. I think, in fact, actually, the last pack I opened had 1 copy of each of them, which was pretty cool. This card, of course, is crazy. I mean, it's a 5-cost 4/5 Sentinel as a fail case. Or, not Sentinel, sorry, Ambush is a fail case. With the Bounty Hunter tag, so it makes credits with Boba Fett. So, fail case, you bring this down, you ambush into something, you kill it, you make a credit, and Forlom probably lives. But obviously what you want to do, and this is a very slow turn, but if you can do all of these things, the value is immense, of course, is you play Zuckuss, next turn you flip Boba Fett, then you attack with Zuckuss, and then you play Forlom to attack again with Zuckuss. I did that a couple times because sometimes your opponent just isn't able to deal with all of the threats, and maybe they're prioritized on your still in this scenario readied leader, and they don't want to kill your Zuckuss. And then you just play the Forlom, and you just completely like ruin the ground arena. The ground arena is just yours at this point. There's nothing they can really do about that. Very, very, very strong card. Again, the fail case being a 4/5 ambush for 5 is, I would already just play that card, and this is so much better than that. And it's just an uncommon, so while you probably will not have 2 Zuckusses in your Bounty Hunter decks, you probably will get like a Forlom, which is cool. Then, of course, Guild Ambush Team, which is a 5-cost 5/4 ambush, which we've seen before from Spark of Rebellion. It was probably the best common in that set for draft, and this is just that, but I would argue better because it has the Bounty Hunter tag, which means a lot. Because worst case scenario, this is 5 cost, comes down, kills something your opponent does, and it dies too, but it leaves behind a credit. So it goes 1 for 1 and makes a credit. But most of the time, it comes down and it kills something and it still lives, and still makes the credit. So huge fan of Guild Ambush Team. Again, the fact it comes down on the turn that Boba flips can be really nice as well. Big fan of this. Nightwind Assailants we've talked about. Partisan U-Wing. I did this, I think, once. Like I said about your space units, you want them to be pressuring base or like doing something pretty impressive when they come down. And this just wasn't doing that. Like 3 attack on a space unit that comes down on turn 5 when I could be playing a Guild Ambush Team or Forlom or even Nightwind Assailants is really not what I wanted to be doing. This was a desperation include. This was like a 30th card situation, but it did its work sometimes. Nothing Left to Fear is a nice way to ignore the space arena because it is one of the pieces of removal in this game, in this set that goes across arena. Of course, I was doing the splash thing for it, but it was usually worth it. I mean, we've talked about this. Craving Power was the powered down version of Overwhelming Garage, and this is the powered down version of Craving Power. And it definitely does feel like the powered down version of Craving Power. It is definitely worse than that, but Craving Power is arguably one of the best cards in Legends of the Force for Limited, and a powered down version of one of the best cards is still a very good card, and I felt that way about this too. The +2/+2 was also just, I mean, as we know, pretty nice. Big fan of this. Milladin Rider, not a bounty hunter, but I did actually do the when played to return my Guild Ambush Team once, and that was really cool. But usually this is just a 6-cost 5/6 ambusher, which is, of course, nice and substantially actually more resilient than the Guild Ambush Team, right? 5/4 dies a lot easier than a 5/6. So huge fan of this, and while it doesn't have the Bounty Hunter trait, it's another reason why I think Boba Yellow is going to be the best version. Not because this necessarily plays into the Bounty Hunter, I guess, idea, but more because it's just a very strong common in yellow. Next was Jabba's Rancor. This was a very solid card, very solid finisher. Like I said in the set review, you usually just want to go face with this and just like let your opponents have to deal with their 1 or 2 ground units. It's nice, big fan. Someone stole this from me in one of the games with the card that it like, you know, you swap a unit with your opponent's unit, and then whoever took control of the unit that costs less makes credits equal to the difference. Someone stole my Rancor, which was pretty cool. But yeah, I think this card is a very good top end for sure, and it's of course you want to play it in Jabba where you can ambush it. But yeah, I think this is a great top end. Maul won me more games than I was expecting. I knew this card was good, but I think I underestimated it a little bit. That being said, there is a lot of removal in this set, so these like big 7 drops that don't do anything immediately get worse, but it is definitely a removal check, and oftentimes your opponent is not going to be holding removal in hand at this point in the game. They've usually used removal on your Forlom, or your Zuckuss, or your Milladin Rider, or something like that. And now, by the time you drop Maul, they're sort of out of removal, and 8 is a little bit much to be dealing with just board presence alone. And then once Maul starts to attack, it's just kind of over. If you can get an attack off with Maul, it just gets very, very difficult for your opponent to kill Maul and stabilize that game. So it did win me a couple of games. I'm still not, I don't think he's like a bomb, even though he did definitely play like one of those games that he won, just because I do think coming down and doing nothing is like a little bit of a liability for a card that costs this much. I don't think it's enough of a liability, of course, to make Maul not a good card, but just, you know, be aware of that. Yeah, I think Maul is very, very strong. And then lastly, we had, and of course he was out of aspect here, so I was often using the base for him, but not always. I think I played him on 9 once or twice, and it was good. And speaking of playing things on 9, Mercenary Fleet, which was just the 9-cost 10/10 vanilla base unit. I mean, it's fine. I did play it once or twice, and I don't think it ever actually hit more than one time. My opponent usually was able to deal with it, either through hard removal or through a decent amount of space combat and removal and stuff like that. But each time I played it, of course, it was a must kill. So, when your big vanilla unit requires attention, that's an okay place to be. Even if they are able to deal with it, they probably have to spend resources and maybe tempo to deal with it effectively. All right, how'd this one do? So, full disclosure, I actually think this deck was better than the previous one. Even though the previous one had the 2 masteries. This one didn't have any masteries, but it did still have the 2 haymakers, and it missed it on the masteries, but instead had just an absolutely nuts bounty hunter curve and package with the Zuckuss Forlom combo, with the Maul top end, which is, I guess, not a bounty hunter. I don't know, maybe they're about the same. I think they're very similar. They're both quite good, but this deck I ended up going 3-1. I actually lost in round 1, and the reason I lost was just to a space aggro. I just took way too much damage in space, and I wasn't really able to deal with that. As you can imagine by looking at this, I was hoping to just rush my opponent down on the ground, but Zuckuss, as strong as he is very good at controlling the ground arena, but he doesn't actually hit all that hard into base, and that was a downside when my opponent was hammering me pretty hard in space. So I did end up losing that. They were very close games, and then that was into the client blue, actually, was my one loss on the weekend, which is not a deck I was expecting to be a top contender, but hey, there you go. Then after that, I played an Enfys deck. That's the deck where they stole my unit, my Rancor. That one actually, it felt like there was more potential there than I was giving it credit for. But every time my opponent paid 2 for the ability, it did feel like I was kind of coming out ahead. Like, yeah, some on-attack abilities are good, right? There's the 1/4 that deals 2 to a base on attack. That's dealing 5 to base every time now. And it's your turn 1 play. Like, that's definitely really good. But you foregoed playing a 2 or a 3 cost card or a 4 cost card or whatever on curve in order to do this damage to my base on a unit that is quite easy for me to deal with eventually. So I did always feel like I was coming out ahead. The 3/7 stat line was good on Enfys. The fact that you got to do the ability for free. But I always felt like I was ahead whenever the ability came out on the front side. So end up winning that game. The next one was another Boba red deck. And that was also a pretty close one that I just kind of, I just got the Zuckuss combo out, and my opponent wasn't really able to do much against that. It was just like once Zuckuss controlled the ground, I think we both went like similarly light on space units. And it's really hard to beat this deck when it comes to controlling the ground. Another fun combo with Target Tagger and Zuckuss is that you can have Zuckuss out, play Target Tagger. Now Zuckuss is swinging for 5, and he's dealing 5 damage to a unit because his power is buffed by Target Tagger. There's just a lot of really gross stuff you can do here. So I was able to control the ground quite effectively in that game, and it ended up getting me the win. And then lastly was a Vel yellow deck, which was the deck I was very scared about. So I was very scared about Vel going into this weekend whenever I noticed I wasn't playing her. I only ended up getting paired into her once, and I did end up winning, but the games were very lopsided. Game 2 and Game 3 in particular. So Game 1 was a little bit closer. I did end up winning Game 1, but there was some back and forth until I managed to squeeze ahead. Game 2, when my opponent had initiative, I don't think I've been rolled that hard at Star Wars Unlimited in a very long time. My opponent opened on Canyon Frontrunner, and that just was able to just, I don't really have a turn 1 play into that. And then turn 2, they did the 2/4 that turns off enemy credits, I believe. And then just started buffing a bunch of stuff with Vel. Because I didn't really have presence on the ground, I wasn't able to deal with that, so my opponent just kind of got a free experience token every turn without even the credit downside, and then they were able to just snowball from there. There was no point where I thought I was even close to like crawling back. As soon as I saw that turn 1 front runner, it was just kind of over, and then the turn 2, I think it's Convex Security something or other, it was just over at that point. And then Game 3, I was able to just sort of, I think I also started on front runner, although I should have taken a note here, but I was able to sort of just run away with the game pretty handily at the beginning and then drop Maul, and it was kind of just after that, Maul was just able to win me the game. So did end up winning that one, and that left me 3-1 on Saturday. So 4-0 on Friday and 3-1 on Saturdays. I'm totally happy with that. I do feel like I opened very well. I don't think I would have been able to do that record if I didn't. The decks really came together. I think especially this one, the Bounty Hunter synergy in this one is just so nice. Definitely would have loved another target tagger, but other than that, I can't really complain too much. So some overall early thoughts. This video is already getting a little longer than I wanted it to be, but as you know from my last video, I love yapping about this game. So removal is far more abundant than previous sets. It's still not like everywhere, especially when I was playing against that client blue player, the one who ended up beating me. They had so much removal in their deck in a way that I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot you could have this much removal in a limited deck. There's just a lot of like very good pieces of removal at common. There's Lost and Forgotten. Haymaker is removal that you can play at common. There's some good bounces. Display Piece, I think, is an uncommon, but that ended up being okay if you play it. Usually you want to play it after the leader flip, but in a pinch. So the removal in this set, do not sleep on that. And then there's so much good ambush at common in this set as well, which feels like removal or better a lot of the time. So cards like now Mastery doesn't care so much about the ambush removal, but cards like Mastery, which are, you know, very strong, especially if you're able to put them on a leader, can be a little bit risky in a set with good removal. Just be very careful about the amount of like Voltron you try to do, because there's a lot of removal in this set. Some of it is actually hard removal and a lot of it is actually good. So just be careful about that. Beware space aggro. So in a lot of sets recently, it's been somewhat feasible not to ignore space, but to sort of put it a little bit on your back burner. You can do that here for sure, because it is similarly space light to the previous few sets, but be very careful doing that, because I lost a game. My one lost match was due to the space arena, and another game that was very close, I think I was like 1 point away from losing, was also just because my opponent hit my base 4 times with Prototype Tie Advance, and there was nothing I could do about it. So just be really careful about that. I will say it does seem like a more pauper set for limited. So what that means, if you're not a magic head like me, is a lot of the power of the set is at common and uncommon, which is good. That's what you kind of want to see in a limited set. It means that if you're in your open lane, everybody is going to be able to find the archetype that's best for them, right? If it's the contrary to this is it being a prince set, which is where like all the powers and like the rares and the legendaries and stuff like that. And that's kind of a problem, because then whenever you're actually in the sealed or draft portion, you feel a little bit more at the mercy of RNG, because if you don't open like the crazy set of rares or legendaries and your opponents do, then you're just at a huge disadvantage, where for the commons and uncommons, there's just a higher chance that everybody will have access to some set of powerful commons. So it's not, I prefer that. So this does seem like a very pauper set. A Guild Ambush Team, Milladin Riders, Circuit Challenger are 3 insane ambush cards, all at common. Lost and Forgotten is great removal at common. Haymaker's great removal at common. Mastery is a great upgrade at common. And then I have Prototype Tie Advance and Canyon Frontrunner on the screen, which are also great commons for their respective roles. I will also say that after yellow being the weakest color for 2 sets in a row, I think yellow does seem very strong. I'm very tentatively thinking about calling it the strongest color in the sets, but it's still a little bit too early for me to make any like super strong claims on that, and I don't want to seem like a fool in 2 months whenever we all agree that yellow's terrible. But super early, I'm thinking yellow's very good. Again, the fact that you can have just all of these strong ambush cards in your yellow deck at common, which means you're going to have at least probably 1 and sometimes more of each of them. Very, very, very good. But I don't know if I've seen a color where I'm like, this whole color is bad. I haven't seen enough of the set yet to know, but I will say keep an eye out on yellow. Keep an eye out on yellow. Something else I want to quickly mention is about the splash bases. So there's sort of, as far as I can tell, 2 good ways to use them, and I think they are both good. One of them is to fill your curve. If you just kind of have a weak 3 slot, but you opened a 3-drop that's in a different set of colors, throw that in. That one is a little bit risky, of course, because if your opponent, like I said, bounces that or something like that, then it's basically just hard removal. And the other way you can use it is to splash some big bomb or something like that, and that's also very good, right? I think both of those are great options for different reasons, and I think why not both, right? Fix your curve and put on the bomb, and then if you don't draw the half of your curve that you can play without your base, then you can use it on that, and if you do, then you can use it on your bomb. Great. Yeah, I think like 2 or 3 is probably like a reasonably safe number. Sometimes you just have to be okay with playing a card for an extra 2, and that'll like suck, I guess, when it happens, but ultimately it'll probably be fine. It is going to make reading signals harder in the actual draft portion, because previously, if you saw like a very strong, let's say, yellow card pick 5, then that probably means that yellow is reasonably open at that part of the table. But now, if yellow is not open at that part of the table, someone is still going to take that powerful yellow card because they'll just play it with their off aspect base. So I haven't done any drafts yet. I've just done the pre-release sealed, so I haven't had any first-hand experience with that yet, but I think I'm going to this week, and I suspect it'll make drafting different. I'm not sure if it'll be better or worse, but certainly be different. So just keep an eye out for that. All in all, I'm excited to do more limited events in this set. Removal is back to not being terrible, and I think that's cool. It seems like there's a lot of interesting and cool combos you can do here with the off-aspect bases, which I think is super neat. There's different archetypes you can build between rebels or bounty hunters, and I think that's cool. But it's not like a tribal or a typal set or anything like that. You don't need to build a bounty hunter or a rebel deck, but the options are there for if you want. It seems like there's a lot of depth into what you can build in this set, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface of that right now. So I'm very excited to see how that all plays out. So how did your pre-releases go? If you watched to the end of my really long video that I did last time, you know that I really want to hear about your pre-release experiences. You can put them in that video's comments. You can put them in this comments. You can email them to me, whatever. I want to hear about them. I really do, because that's how I'm going to get better. And if you remember the beginning of this video, I said that the point of this channel is to make you better and to make me better at this game. So I've told you about my experiences. It's only fair you tell me about your experiences now, okay? I want to hear them. How did the pre-releases go? What did you find good? Did someone play Saw and go 4-0? That would be cool. That'd be sweet. Maybe. I don't know. Send me their list. Anyway, I've yapped enough. That's all I have for y'all today. And as always, may the force be with you.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?